speaker, Professor Ajay Gupta. Professor Gupta would be delivering lecture on Gandhi and the message to the world affairs. Professor Gupta teaches at Ahmedabad University. She is director of the Study Abroad Program and Diaspora Research Center at Gujarat University. She is also principal of Bhavan Sheth RA College of Arts and Commerce, Ahmedabad, and has written extensively on Gandhi, English literature, diaspora studies, tribal art and literature. And one of the most significant contribution of Professor Gupta is that she has revised the biography of Gandhi written by Pyarelal Ji, the private secretary of Gandhi at the later stage of his life, and that biography is considered to be the most authentic biography on Gandhi. And this biography is also forwarded by our late president, Shri Rajendra Prasad. Over to Professor Neerja Gupta.
Very good afternoon, Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor R.S. Duvesir, my very esteemed scholar, co-panelist Professor Chandrakala Pariya Didi, my friend and Registrar of CUG Professor Alok Gupta Ji, Professor Manish Ji, Dr. Vijendra Singh Ji, and all the organizing members of this wonderful webinar, which is so very relevant with its theme. It's a privilege and an honor to participate in this particular webinar. Coming straight to the subject, I would like to talk on the international impact of Gandhi. And I must compliment from my heart to both the previous speakers, Honorable VC Saib, when he delivered the chair address, as well as Chandrakala ma'am, because the span they had put up for Gandhi, that without that span, without that basics, without those understandings, if we move to the international, it would be dishonesty. To understand Gandhi, one has to be local. One has to be Indian. One has to understand the Indian ethos, because that ethos has traveled with Gandhi to the world. So the span earlier put up by Honorable VC Saab and thereafter extended by Chandrakala ma'am is actually the base of Gandhi. So when Gandhi goes at the international level, he doesn't go as a person, he doesn't go as a thought, he goes as a soul, and soul lives forever. Soul doesn't stop. So that happens with Gandhi, that he doesn't travel as a transient thought. He doesn't travel to any panel as what we can say a transient solution or as an effect, but it's a perpetuality, what we find in Gandhi. And I would like to start with two anecdotes. The first anecdote is a personal anecdote. I was traveling and at the Istanbul airport, at the bookshop, I found a book, and it was a very small book. The book was Going to Wipe Their Tears. It was the English translation. That's how I landed on revising Gandhi's biography. It was a small English translation, and the book was on the new arrivals display, translated by Pyarelal Ji. So I picked up the book, being the nostalgic, feeling at a foreign airport. I picked up the book and started reading, and you won't believe, I found around minimum 3 other people reading the same book, and they were not Indians. So that immediately, gave me an urge to ask them why they picked up the book. So to one of them I could talk, because you can understand in Istanbul, being a lady and then talking to strangers may not be as acceptable or may not be advisable as well. I could find one of the people who could talk to me, and I asked, why are you reading? He said, I don't know, I want to understand Gandhi. These two words, understand Gandhi. If we could understand Gandhi, we can understand the Indian thought. Because what Gandhi is the compilation of all the religions, of all the theories which are humanitarian, of all those solutions which as a society we should reach to convert politics into a humanitarian way of life. What happens is we segregate like a section. We say this is political arrangement, this is sociological theory, this is something psychological theory. But what Gandhi does is, for Gandhi, man is foremost. And for man, he creates societies. For societies, he gives solutions. So when he said, I want to understand Gandhi, that particular phrase had hit me, and diligently I read that small book on my travel, because now I also wanted to understand Gandhi. Now the second anecdote. Around 3-4 years back, or maybe 5-6 years back, in Russia there was a case, in a court case, and the court case was against Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And there was a professor. He argued that Bhagavad Gita should be banned in Russia because it teaches to go for war. It provokes for violence. Arjuna was in the moh sthiti. He didn't want to go for war, and Krishna provokes him to undertake the arms and go for war. So this book actually teaches war, so it should be banned. Now this was a very unusual argument about Bhagavad Gita. We all know it's a book of karma. But there the whole contention was built up in such a manner that half of the country was debating that yes, Bhagavad Gita should be banned. And from India, boxes of commentaries, they landed at the judge's house, because they were telling how Bhagavad Gita is not a book of violence, but it's a book of karma. But they didn't understand what is karma. Karma has to have an Indian nuance, an Indian genre. But then came to the rescue Gandhi, when it was argued in the court that see, Gandhi we take as the apostle of peace, and Srimad Bhagavad Gita was part and parcel of Gandhi. Gandhi believed in Gita. Gandhi carried Gita like an article and like a thought. Gandhi preached Gita and Gandhi practiced Gita. So, impact of Gandhi on the international panel in the modern times is so visible, as I gave you as a personal anecdote and as an international event, that Gandhi, when he was quoted and when the things were quoted from out of his speeches, his articles, his interviews, how important Gita is to Gandhi, then the court case went against the petition that it should be banned. Hence, Russia can still read Gita. So, Gandhi to have as a soul or as a person, we must understand that Gandhi is not a thought. Gandhi is not a theory. Gandhi is a practice. If we can understand Gandhi in our day-to-day practice, then we are not Gandhian. We have to understand this difference between the noun and the adjective. We are making Gandhi as an adjective. So we say Gandhian thought, Gandhian dress, Gandhian way of living, but Gandhi himself never became an adjective. Gandhi remained a noun. So we have to understand Gandhi as a noun itself. He gives us the way from purgation to a dignified epoch. And his theory is equity, and equity of liberation. The liberations he designs through spiritual means of religions, and he liberates the societies. So if we can find this flow chart, that he moves from purgation to a dignified epoch. For purgation, he needs the equity of liberation through the spiritual means, and that too becomes the religion of man. He doesn't talk the religion of sects. He is more interested in the religion of man. Now we have to understand that 19th century, it brought an end to a number of epoch-making changes. At the dawn of 20th century, the countries have seen the sun like never before. It was a society which was divided more socially than politically, and India tops on this list because it was governed by the biggest colonizer and India had the biggest variety in its society. So the challenges were from the bottom to top and vice versa. At this scene, Gandhi was not yet Mahatma. He was still struggling in South Africa. He, when came back he was a small leader. He was known as a leader, but was he a national leader? That Gandhi himself had to find out, because the need was there, but was he successful in becoming an international leader? And before that, the irony is that Gandhi was known internationally before he would known as a national leader. He had already done many things at the international platform, whether in London, whether in South Africa, whether on his journey from London to South Africa, when he writes Hind Swaraj, when he challenges so many theories about education, about machine, about industry, about medicines, about moralities. So when Gandhi comes back to India, the baggage of Gandhi had already arrived. That thought that who Gandhi may be had already arrived. The inquisitiveness was there without seeing the man, without hearing the man. It was all through via that he arrived in India. Now that same Gandhi, when he has to go back to international identities, we have to understand that it's a mix. It's a mix of national and international, the political arrangement, sociological arrangement, and therefore it was very important for Gandhi to find out a unilateral way, an equilibrium. So he talks about a concrete and genuine human path, and this path he calls is the path of love. He motivates people to work out of love and for love, and that is why he says that oppressor is a bad person, but don't hate the person, hate the work, what they are doing to oppress you. And then out of his simplicity, out of his single-minded devotion to non-violence, to satyagraha, and Chandrakala ma'am has in a very detailed manner, beautifully has explained what is satyagraha. Who can be a satyagrahi? Not anyone can put the insistence on truth unless and until one can prove that he is worthy enough to wear truth. One has to wear like a garment the truth from mind to body and soul. Then only one can be a satyagrahi. So when Gandhi talks about love, about non-violence, about satyagraha, it was not out of miracle. It was not a mystical theory. It was a theory which he was practicing. He had adopted as a behavior, and that is why he remained a common man who is also unsurpassable. This common man till date is unsurpassable because he never tried to become great or illuminated or worshipped or a thinker or a philosopher. He still is an innocent soul who just believes in love, dignity, respect, and justice. These were his insistence. Now, his main two theories, that is the theory of ahimsa and theory of satya. So, non-violence and truth, they are not bookish theory. He did not find these theories in some scripture or in some, outwardly sayings, or he was not trained to understand what is truth and what is non-violence. He quotes very beautifully, first of all, he quotes about ahimsa. He says both the principles I have learned from Ba. And then he says when they were young, because both of them got married very young. When he was young, he never liked that Ba should go anywhere. And he was very possessive of Ba. And Ba was very fond of going to the relatives, going to temples, accompanying her mother-in-law and all. And whenever she would come back, Gandhi would be furious. and he would scold her, and once or twice I think he had also raised the hand, as it says in his autobiography. So he would be very annoyed that umpteen times Gandhi had asked Ba not to go out, why she keeps on going. And each time when Gandhi would lose his control, Ba would stand there, and at the end she would only smile and leave. When this happened repeatedly, Gandhi learnt a lesson of life, that out of my furious anger, she doesn't do anything. She doesn't revert with the same feeling. She doesn't fight. She never gets angry. It's only that small smile that taught Gandhi what is ahimsa. And he acknowledges, he says, I have learned the lesson of ahimsa from Ba. And the second lesson again about truth. Gandhi says when he went to South Africa, there was a stricture that all those who are non-Christians have to marry again. And at that time, Gandhi already had 3 children. So Gandhi came and told Ba that we have to go back and get married like a Christian in the church. So Ba said, no, I am already married. Why should I get married again? Gandhi said, no, but this is the law of the land and they will not acknowledge us as a married couple. So we have to get married. And Ba said, no, I am not going to get married under any circumstances. Gandhi said, well, if you don't understand this, then they will arrest you, they will take you to the jail. And because I am ready, so they won't take me. So Ba said, it's okay, let them take me to the jail. Gandhi said, please understand, Ba, if you go to the jail, they will not give you anything to eat. What will you eat there? She said, I'll not eat anything, I'll eat fruits. Gandhi said, no, in jail they don't give you fruits. She said, okay, I'll go on fasting and I'll not eat anything. Gandhi said, Ba, you will die if you don't eat anything in jail. Now this is the point what I'm making it. Ba said, one promise you make me today. If they arrest me, take me to the jail and I die in the jail, the day I die, you have to call me Devi and I am happy to die. And in Yerwada jail, when Ba actually died in the jail, even today, at that Smriti Sthal, it is written Devi. This whole Satya Agraha for that Satya, insistence and resistance for the truth, that if I am truthful, why should I bow down to the artificial arrangements which the societies want us to make? And Gandhi very clearly acknowledges that day I understood what truth can be and how to remain and stick to the truth. If everything goes wrong, one should be ready even to die for the truth. So Gandhi, when we talk about, he's very simple, very common and very relatable. We can practice Gandhi. Well, there is no need to repeat history or the incidents here, but the ease with which Gandhi brings in the self-reliance, Gandhi brings in truth, non-violence in the common practices of the societies, they show that his method was very effective. He established a continual command over the mental plane of the generations. He affects mind. Gandhi doesn't affect books and theories or strategists. He affects mind. If we understand Gandhi, we find a change within our own self. Our own truthfulness start conflicting us. It always questions us that this is right, so why we are behaving otherwise. So Gandhi is a very strong impact on mind. If we genuinely follow Gandhi, someday we might go to insanity if we try to obstruct it with the worldly materialistic behavior of the society. He is such a great insight. We may ask very conveniently, that is Gandhi enough to draw a dream of a utopian society with his own purgative experiments? Because he talks of Ram Rajya, and Gandhi's Ram Rajya is not only for India. Gandhi's Ram Rajya is not the Hindu Rajya. Gandhi's Ram Rajya is not the Ram of Dashrath. It's a very big concept of that utopian state where what we have in our Shastras, na Raja, na Dando, na Dandasit. He is talking of that state where the highest trust is planted for each other's welfare. So all the theories, utilitarian theories, the welfare theory, or all these Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, they fall so short when Gandhi talks about the Ram Rajya. So we need to question that, is Gandhi enough to create that utopian society? And the whole battle for independence, what Gandhi fought, it was from Gandhi's knowledge of human equality and dignified societies. He was fighting only for two things. One is the equality of human beings, and second is dignified societies. Now, can we call it as a new epic? Because when Suki referred to Gandhi, when Nelson Mandela refers to Gandhi, when even in the new context many countries refer to Gandhi, even Abe Shinje, he quotes Gandhi. What are they making references to? Which epoch they are trying to create out of Gandhi? So can these societies possess endurance as a precursor of change? Or they are just a bygone enigma? We need to understand. The answer is surely yes, because Gandhi, he draws the utopian strength from dharma. When he talks about 7 principles, we will talk about it a bit later, but his belief in Hindu religion is not accidental. His belief in Gita is not accidental. His belief in Ram Rajya is not accidental. He was very comfortable in handling these intricate issues and would love to answer all those queries which actually questioned the beliefs in rituals and traditions of Hindus. That is why his speeches, writings, dialogues, interviews, everywhere we find a narration about Ishavasyam, Ten Tyakten Bhunjitha. He said there is enough for everyone's need, but why should we want for anyone's greed? We need to understand this Ten Tyakten Bhunjitha of Vedas when he calls about Ishavasyam Idam Sarvam. So Gandhi is basically a universal solution, and that is why he appeals so easily to the people abroad, to the politicians, even to the sports people we have seen quoting Gandhi. We all know that it is Sa Vidya Ya Vimuktaye. Gandhi is that liberation force. To understand the Gandhi knowledge systems, it is liberating. And liberating like what? When Gandhi said that open the walls, don't sit on the walls. You have walls around you, you drop all the walls. So he is actually re-narrating or rereading Ano Bhadra Kritvo Yantu Vishwataha. Let everything comes to us. Whatever is good from all over the world comes to us. But then what do? Have we become the capitalist that every good thought has come to us? We get it patented and bound and put in the libraries or cupboards or sell it for a price? Or do we own something? Have we become the custodians? No. Then Gandhi says, spread the love. When Gandhi says spread the love, he is actually going to the next sukta of our Vedas, who says, A Vadani Janebhya. Whatever I have is for the people. Whatever I have accumulated is for the people. Whether these are the words, these are the solutions, these are the feelings, or these are the practices. So for Gandhi, opening up the self and adopting the minimum self is leading to voluntary poverty. A person who could have ruled India, a person who had reigned supreme, who enjoyed the highest respect in the world of political systems, across communities, across religions, across nations, he chooses to be a non-political person. He never belonged to any power or position or any decorum. So when Gandhi chooses voluntary poverty, he is actually not only shredding out the outside synonyms. For example, he minimized his clothings, he minimized his eating systems, he minimized his utilities and his necessities. He was actually minimizing himself also. So when Gandhi retracts to mourn, when Gandhi retracts to non-using of the words, he was actually practicing this poverty to everything which would have gone waste if we overuse them. So to understand Gandhi, we need to understand his spiritual doctrine. Unless and until we go to his spiritual doctrine, we just can't understand his religion, the political theory, the social theory, or his urge why he wanted to liberate the oppressed souls. We know Gandhi is under constant criticism. One section of the society feels that Gandhi has given undue importance to Muslims. The other section says that if Gandhi would have put the foot down, he could have saved Bhagat Singh, Rajguru and Sukhdev. The third section says no, Gandhi has Christianized Hindu Dharma. There are many attacks on Gandhi, and there are other set of scholars who have been defending Gandhi. But does Gandhi defend himself? Is there a way we can find that Gandhi actually created such an ecosystem around himself that actually Gandhi himself is his defender? He doesn't need scholars. If the attacker reads whole of Gandhi, then he would find the answers then and there. Gandhi puts the questions, he puts himself to the test. He opens up himself to multiple experiments, and that is why he chooses the title of his autobiography as Experiments with Truth. His truth is singular, but his experiments are plural. So he goes ahead with two types of truth. One truth is the relative truth, and the relative truth he keeps on changing. He keeps on changing the practices, the beliefs, the theories, but the absolute truth he is trying to reach to remains one and only. That is why again and again he said, whatever you want, I can make changes, but don't ask me to make changes in Hind Swaraj. Again, we need to understand that the Gujarati title of Hind Swaraj was not Hind Swaraj. It was Hind Suraj. The English title was Hind Swaraj, and both had a slightly different preface by Gandhi. When he talks about the Swaraj, he was very well talking about our own governing systems. But then when he talks about Suraj, he was talking about the non-faulty systems, no follies into it. So when Gandhi talks about Hind Swaraj, he is very sure that actually it is a compilation of Vedas, Upanishad, Gita, Krishna, Buddha, Guru Nanak, Mahavir Swami, and then the scriptures what he has read. When he reads it today after the lockdown, remaining in house for 4.5 months, we have seen how Gandhi's insistence on the local dependence, on our own local and then our own, what we say, the confidence levels out of the locally available means was so very true. He insisted each time that a human being has the minimum requirements. If we can understand this fact of life, then the life be beyond conflicts. It's only the outward necessities which pressurize us. As a human, we are born with the minimum necessities, and that is what he has been telling again and again in Hind Swaraj, that why you need industrialization, why you need the modern medical systems, why you need the modern education system. Our new education policy itself has gone back to what Gandhi wanted in Hind Swaraj. Our modern health systems have proved that in treating Corona, Ayurveda and yoga have gone to be most powerful and Indian spiritual ways, the way we say namaste and other things. What Gandhi was doing is actually bringing all the traditional Indian knowledge systems into the practice, and he was propagating that only. But because at the dawn of 20th century, at the verge of new India of 1947, in the making of a new country, in the first 2 decades of India, we were so glamorized with the British and Western culture that we actually rejected Gandhi as a practice. We continued Gandhi as a theory, but he was not to be seen in the practice. Today, the latest pandemic and endemic situation has actually proved us again that see how Gandhi was visualizing a situation with the minimum of the solutions, and the local, what we say, the raw material has to be very, very simple. He was the spokesperson of the conscience of all mankind. He would say, I don't mind if there is a limit to the development of intellect, but there should not be a limit to the development of heart. He was more depending on the emotions and not on the intellect. That is why the social creativity of Gandhi, it revealed a concrete and genuine human path of love. He was a great believer of love, and through his life of spiritual and existential combat for human rights, he fought for whole of the mankind. He never thought this is South Africa, this is London, this is India, this is Fiji, this is Mauritius, this is New Zealand. He actually appointed these ambassadors of love in almost all the continents. And then he worked to make it possible the establishment of an egalitarian community which was based on 3 things. The first thing is the prayer, the second thing is the liberation, and the third thing is the truth. And Gandhi was widely read. We should not mislead Gandhi to be as naive as self-generating wisdom like Kabir, or maybe to some other our great thinkers who were actually out of inner spirits and inner inspiration were writing. Gandhi was a very well-read person. He had been reading many philosophers, Tolstoy, G.K. Chesterton. He had been quoting them again and again. Then he said, there can be no oppression unless the oppressed and oppressor cooperate each other. If the oppressed does not revolt, the oppressor is bound to oppress. So it's a folly from both the sides. This was a very big sentence. Even today we have broken the society saying that oppressed is the particular sympathized society. But Gandhi finds fault with both the societies, and he says both are in hands and gloves. Unless and until they disjoint this hand and glove situation, you cannot liberate the oppressor. And that is why it created an immediate impact at all level, whether you call it national, international, individual, spiritual, regional. His basic knowledge system was that non-cooperation is an attempt to awaken the masses to a sense of dignity and the power. Unless and until the masses open up themselves, the politics all over the world, they try to operate on utilitarian principles of expediency. But when it deteriorates purely to the Machiavellian device, then it is all fair in politics, it leads to criminalism. And that is the objection of Gandhi. Why criminalities in the politics? For him, religion is a way of life and dogma, and that's what Chandrakala ma'am also said. For him, the means are as important as the aims. The path is very important, because the path takes you to the righteousness of the creation of a justified society. Unless and until you follow the path with the rightful means, you are actually aiming for a crime, for a criminal society, and that is what actually we are seeing in practice. Wherever the paths are not defined earlier, we lead ourselves to the chaos. So he calls religion becomes an empty thing if it is separated from ordinary human interest. We have to bring back the religion to the non-violence, to truth, and that is what he says, that my truth is religion. My truth itself is religion. Most astonishing are his practices leading to the economic thoughts. Much misunderstood, Gandhi often appeared against the machines, against technology, and then he's been criticized by the dominance of individual societies. But he says there are 7 sins. Unless and until we address these sins, politics without principles, commerce without morality, wealth without work, education without character, science without humanity, pleasure without conscience, and worship without sacrifice. And here sacrifice doesn't mean Bali, because we know he was following Bhakt Kavi Narsi Mehta, and Narsi Mehta has said in Gujarati, Bhakti no marg che shuro no. Like if you want to become a Bhakt, you have to be very brave inside, courageous inside, because you have to bow your head. You have to shed down the ego. You have to go back to the earth to say pranam and then offer your total self to someone. And this offering of the total self, this shedding of the ego, this shedding of the I, this is maybe a feat of a very courageous soul. And that is why this message remains relevant, and that is why Gandhi is accepted internationally, because he is an authentic liberation psychologist. He hits the psychology, he hits the thought, he hits the thinking, and his social creativity model, they are the virtues of kindness, selflessness, firmness, courage, lawfulness, self-civility, then we can say masterly love and truth. And they whole transform the individual, and as a result, they transform the societies. They are not separate. Gandhi never separates the social philosophies from the political philosophies. That is why he first talks about the inner change. He rejects modern civilization because he says it's a disease, it's a curse. It leads to violence, conflicts, corruptions, injustice, exploitation, oppression, mistrust, and process of dehumanization. We all deal in education sector. We all know how our previous education policy has made the machines out of human being. We have not been able to create an ethical or moral environment in the educated lots. We are struggling with the same principles as Gandhi was actually defining them in words. It has led the world to a deep crisis. The earth's resources, they are covered by a handful of people. They are only enjoying, they are giving to their generations. The conventional energy sources, they are getting depleted. Forests are being destroyed. Air, water, soil, everything is polluted. And therefore, there is a message for eco-friendly people in Gandhi's philosophy. We today are living under the threat of nuclear war. For past 3 days, what our Jawans are facing at Ladakh, we are very tight sitting on our chairs to see what is happening at Ladakh. Are we moving towards war? It has again divided the world. We have seen how Japan, how USA, how Russia, they have responded to what Gandhi is talking. He says modern civilization has led us to the shadows of nuclear war and environmental disasters. The thinking men of the world today are again looking to Gandhi to find out a way out of this crisis and to build an alternative model of sustainable development. In Indian tradition, we have a beautiful word for sustainable, and that is Akshun. Our whole language is called Akshar, which cannot be destroyed. Neither word can be destroyed, nor the energy can be destroyed. So why can't we gain the strength from the words and the energy? And there lives Gandhi. There lives the Gandhian solution for the world. I'm coming towards the end now. I would like to sum up many things, because he is a symbol of the alternative in all areas. whether it is agriculture, industry, technology, education, health, economy, or political organization. As much as I have read Gandhi, Gandhi is very simple. Gandhi is very, very delicate. Gandhi is very sensitive. If we can touch Gandhi with our simplicity, it's not difficult to understand Gandhi. Therefore, all international panels which have approached Gandhi with that simplicity, with that honesty, they have been blessed with Gandhi. The more we complicate Gandhi, the more we find him distant, the more we find him impractical, improbable. But Gandhi, in practice, is the most simple way of life. And here I end. I again thank you so much for CUG, for Honorable VC Sir, and thank you Chandra ma'am for being here and attending this also. Thank you so much Manish ji, Prijen ji for making me possible here. Alok ji, namaste. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.